Now let's get started. As already announced, Madam Poonam Syal has asked me to engage a session on entrepreneurship, startup, and their contribution to Atma-Nirbhar Bharat. Okay. So I'll be there till 1 o'clock, maybe 10 minutes thereafter, because we are starting the session a little late. So we may have to extend the session a bit. Okay. So let's first of all try to understand why Atmanirbhar mission was started. What were the compulsions? So as you are all aware, the entire world is suffering from coronavirus for the past more than 2 years now. So the economic crisis triggered by coronavirus pandemic in 2020, that was the basic reason for India to think of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And there were so many challenges, as if you remember, when the very first lockdown was announced in March 2020. So there people suffered a lot, and industry came to almost a grinding halt, and there were widespread losses everywhere. So because of the kind of challenges which were posed by coronavirus pandemic in 2020, so government of India was then forced to think of Atmanirbharta, and the problem was as to how we can go about, how do we make India self-reliant. So while the idea was first mooted by the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji in 2020, but if you go to the background, some of its features, they were almost similar to the feature of Swadeshi movement, which was launched during Britishers' time. And this Swadeshi movement was started on 7th of August 1905. And basically at that point of time, the idea was to take on British regime, the kind of sufferings which India had. So in 1905, so India announced this movement called Swadeshi movement, and almost similar movement was started during 2020, and it was named as Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, taking the concept little forward, Atmanirbharta basically means self-reliant, and you can all understand the importance of being self-reliant in today's context, and especially when China, started posing serious problems to India, not only simply because of this pandemic, but also because of hostile attitude of China towards India. And as you all are fully aware of, India was having a lot of export from China. In fact, what to talk of India, the entire world is importing a lot of goods and services from China, and there's a lot of dependence on China. But when this pandemic happened, the entire world started thinking in terms of reducing their trade ties with China, and different countries, those who could afford, they started thinking in terms of becoming self-reliant. So because of the kind of challenges posed by the coronavirus, and even otherwise because of the attitude of China towards India, so on May 12, 2020, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, he announced a huge package running into almost 20 trillion of financial aids, and the idea was to overcome the crisis and make India Atmanirbhar. The economic package aimed at making India self-reliant, and it was basically intended to make the benefit reach to the laborers, the farmers, honest taxpayers, micro, small, and medium enterprises of the country, and the cottage industry. So many a time, some people, they tend to criticize Atmanirbhar Bharat missions, and some people even talk in terms of probably India is trying to become a protectionist country. So this Abhiyan is not protectionist in nature. In fact, the whole idea is to project India as a growing and as a major economy, an economy which is respected by the developed world, And it's a step towards, like, if we want, there are so many people who keep on talking about this thing, 21st century belonging to India, and probably India would be a dominating country in 21st century. If that has to happen, then India definitely has to become self-reliant to a great extent. And being self-reliant doesn't really mean you get completely cut off from the rest of the world. Self-reliant means you produce by you try to meet your requirements on your own so far as it's possible. Now, uh, these few examples which are explained here, they would further explain the basic concept of self-reliance in India. So India has been making a lot of concerted efforts so as to become self-reliant in different fields. And here are some of the examples of Atma or self-reliance in India. So if you remember, immediately after getting independence, India started strengthening its industrial base. And steel, iron and steel, as you know, are the backbone of any economy. And with a view to become self-reliant in steel production, so India established Steel Authority of India Limited. I need not explain different steel plants which are, working under the banner of Steel Authority of India Limited. And the fact is, today we are one of the leading countries so far as steel production is concerned. So India, so far as steel production is concerned, so its sale which has made a significant contribution. Now, if you talk of other fields, India is a huge country having almost 11,000 technical institutions in the country. These 11,000 institutions are covered or basically they come under the purview of All India Council of Technical Education. So within technical education, engineering education is a very, very important component. And in our country, we have all kind of institution. We have A grade institution, we have B grade institution, we have C grade institution. But Indian Institute of Technology, so far as engineering education in India is concerned, so institutions like, if we have sufficient number of institutions like IITs and equivalent level, so India can definitely become self-reliant in engineering education. So self-reliance in technical education, if we talk about engineering education, if we talk about, I think IITs are one of the good examples. Then yet another example, if you think of, if you talk about the old times before independence, in fact, most of the people, when it comes to talking about management education, people used to talk about, management and art is something which is inborn. Managers cannot be trained, artists cannot be trained. But now time, things have changed a lot. And India established 3 Indian Institute of Management, which happen to be leading management institutions world over. So in the first phase, Indian Institute of Management at this thing, Ahmedabad, Bangalore and Calcutta, they were established. Then Lucknow was added. And if you talk of Indian Institute of Management, we have more than 20 Indian Institute of Management now. Probably the number will further go up. And the output or the product of these Indian Institute of Management is definitely trying to make the India self-reliant so far as management education is concerned. And because of the kind of manpower which is being trained by Indian Institute of Management, so our manpower pass out from these prestigious institutions. They are not only working within the country, they are working outside the country as well. And the pass out of these institutions are definitely keeping the flag of the country high. So in the field of management education, so Indian Institute of Management, they have contributed a lot. And this is the kind of self-reliance which India is expecting. Then in the field of medical sciences, we all are aware of, we used to have earlier All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi. And now, of course, all major states, they have either established or they are in the process of establishing their own Indian Institute of Medical Sciences. So this is a step towards making India self-reliant in the field of medical sciences. Then as regards science education, you see, till recently we used to have only Indian Institute of Science Education at Bangalore. But during past decade or so, a number of Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, they have come up, and these institutions, they are again making country feel proud of their pass outs. And as far as science education is concerned, so ISERs are definitely making the country self-reliant in that particular field. Then similarly, in the field of information, this thing, communication and information and communication technology. So Indian Institute of Information Technology, what they call them as popularly as triple ITs. So triple ITs are playing extremely important role. Then, so far as defense research is concerned, so DRDO is doing wonders, and they have taken this thing, defense research, to the next level, and the whole entire world today knows the kind of projects and the kind of research which is carried out by DRDO, and so many satellites are being launched in our country, and so they have definitely done a lot of proud to the country. In the area of energy sector, so companies like National Thermal Power Corporation and Gas Authority of India Limited, they are making the country self-reliant. So it's not becoming, protectionist as such, but it's basically about having some institutions of excellence or center of excellence, and something producing the this thing, carrying on research and education of the international standard, and making country feel proud of that. So these are few examples of which go a long way in making India self-reliant. Now there are 5 pillars if we have to talk about making India self-reliant or Atma-Nirbhar. So basically the table of Atma-Nirbharta, it stands on 5 important pillars. And these 5 important pillars basically include the economy, then the infrastructure, then technology-driven system, vibrant demography, and the overall demand, or what you can probably consider it as the captive demand within the country. Let's now discuss these items one by one. So first of all, we talk about economy. So if we have to become Atmanirbhar, and India is a growing country having huge population. We were just 33 crore people at the time of getting independence. And if you talk of population today, we have already exceeded 140 crore. So more than 4 times the population what we used to have at the time of independence. And this population can, their needs need to be met. They need to be provided, livelihood. They need to be provided food, shelter, housing, etc. And it's possible provided we have a strong economy. So India has to definitely lay foundation for a strong economy. So strong economy is one precondition or one of the important pillar of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Then economy need to have adequate infrastructure, and infrastructure not for one or two sector, infrastructure for all sectors of the economy. As many of you would know, Indian economy is divided in some more than 60 different sectors of economy, and all these different sectors of economy, they require infrastructure, and that infrastructure has to be strengthened. So there could be so many projects which need to be taken up so as to strengthen infrastructure in India. Then technology driven systems. Last decade or so, you must have seen this thing. So many services are now being extended to the citizen of the country digitally, electronically and digitally. So the whole idea is to do away with this thing, routine kind of functioning. introduce efficiency, making application of information and communication technology, going digital. So in almost all fields, be it education, be it hospitality, be it even defense, be it automobile, what we find is, so technology driven systems are being introduced, and naturally when technology gets introduced, so there would be lesser chances of committing mistakes. Efficiency will definitely improve. So with a view to make India Atmanirbhar Bharat, so third pillar which need to be strengthened is the technology driven systems almost in all spheres of life. Then fourth is your vibrant demography. So would any one of you like to explain the concept of demography? What exactly is the demography? Yes, any of the participants, just with a view to break the monotony, I would expect some of you to respond. Yes, anybody from Kalpana Chawla Polytechnic Ambala or Government Polytechnic Ambala? We have participants from Suluni University. So any one of you can respond. What exactly is demography? How does it become important for a country? Vibrant demography. Can anyone respond?
Sir, is it because of the kind of a different type of population we have in our country? For example, let us say the urban population, the rural population,
Very right, very right.
or in between these two.
Very right, very right. You see, if you understand the characteristics of your population well, I think you can take so many different type of right kind of decisions. So vibrant, basically demography is nothing but, making application of statistics and then understanding the population trends, population characteristics, population segments. And, given today's time, you have all different type of statistical tool, then you have, big data and all this thing. So making application of this thing and then taking some of the business related decision. They may be pertaining to, assessing requirement of goods and services, marketing of products, etc. So if you have vibrant demography in the country, the kind of population which can really respond to different kind of challenges and which can, this thing change from time to time. So that really goes a long way in making India, self-reliant. And above all, the demand. Demand also, you must have seen, the emphasis of the present government is to generate captive demand. By captive demand, I mean adequate demand within the country. You see, you develop your industrial base, you develop your service base, you enhance your rate of economic growth in the country. But all these things are possible provided you have huge market within the countries. Fortunately, in India, we have a huge market. As I referred to earlier, we have more than 140 crore people now, and more than 3 crore Indians, they reside abroad. They keep on sending a lot of valuable foreign exchange to the country. So you can well imagine such a huge market. And there are so many neighboring countries and so many even developed and developing countries. They keep on importing a lot of things from India, be they engineering goods or even the typical food items, auto parts and all. So many things they are exported to other countries. So there's enough of demand within the country, enough of scope for exporting goods and services outside the country. And you all are fully aware of in some of the sector, particularly sector like information and communication technology. So where India has emerged as the world leader. So like that, there could be some other sectors which can be exploited. Now, health sector is yet another important sector. Nowadays, you find there are so many people who come to India for getting treatment, and that's something popularly known as medical tourism. So because treatment outside country, outside India, particularly in developed and developing country, is very, very expensive. Our nursing care, particularly post-operation nursing care, is too good in India. So because of the kind of benefits which Indian economy offers, So health sector is also one of the sector which can contribute a lot towards making India Atma-Nirbhar. So self-reliance, pillars of self-reliance we have discussed. Now let's come to the startup. You know, I suppose you have been introduced to the concept of startup in the very first session. I'll take the discussion a little more forward. So there's a Department of Commerce and Commerce at the national level, and within the Department of Commerce of Government of India, there's a Department of Industrial Policy, Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. This is known as DIPP. DIPP. So DIPP is nothing but constituent of Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, and they have tried to define what exactly is a startup. And as per DIPP definition, a startup is considered to be a company which is incorporated or registered in India. So when we talk of startup, these startups are nothing but they are entities of different kind which are incorporated or registered in India. Further, the department said an entity will be considered a startup. Initially, when the definition was evolved, at that time a decision was taken. The startup would only be in a position to enjoy that status of startup only up to the period of 7 years, initial 7 years. And once the 7 years are over, then the benefit of startup are going to be withdrawn, and that particular business entity or service entity would no more be known as a startup. So, to start with, this definition as given by DIPP. So startup basically exist, enjoy the benefit of a startup up to a period of 7 years. So a startup company is a newly formed business with particular momentum behind it based on perceived demand of its product or services. Any startup, of course, there are so many problems associated with startup, but the startup must choose a particular kind of project which can ultimately be scaled up in the days to come. So that means it will have adequate demand, or that demand is something which has to be perceived by the people who are behind the startup, and be it manufacturing or service providing startup, there should be enough of scope for upscaling that project. That's the second condition. The intention of a startup is to grow rapidly as a result of offering something that addresses a particular market gap. So startup would exist provided there are definitely there's definitely adequate, this thing scope for meeting the needs of the people. So there should be adequate demand for that. Okay. Now, the definition of startup has been revised to some extent, and in fact, that initial period of 7 years, which I referred to earlier, it was, after a few years, the startups were defined having initial period of 7 years, and in case of biotechnology, it was extended 10 years, but now probably this period of 7 to 10, it has been extended in so many other sectors as well. So, when we talk of startup, first of all, it's incorporated as a private limited company or a registered company or a partnership firm, which is known as a limited liability partnership firm. So these could be the three different type of entities. A private limited company, and any private limited company would be registered under Companies Act 1956, amended in 2013, I suppose. Okay. Amended Act of 2013. So either one can register the company under that, or else one could get into a startup and make it a partnership firm, typical conventional partnership firm. But nowadays, Government of India has also introduced the concept of limited liability partnership. So earlier we never used to have this limited liability partnership, but during past few years, this provision has been created, and startup could fall under the category of limited liability partnership. So these could be the three different type of business entities put under startup. Secondly, the startup status would be valid for a period of 10 years. Earlier it was 7 years, but now extended to 10 years. So, this period is counted from the date of incorporation as a company or registering as a partnership or limited liability partnership. And the third condition is any startup has an annual turnover not exceeding 100 crores of any of the financial years since incorporation or since registration. You know, sometimes it so happens a new business entity starts, and maybe within 2 to 3 years, its turnover may be in thousands of crores. So the moment your turnover, suppose to start with, you were under startup category, but because of good business response, your sales have crossed 100 crore rupees in a year. So the moment any startup crosses this threshold limit of 100 crore rupees, okay, in a particular year, so thereafter the startup would not enjoy any benefit of being a startup, and it would be considered like any other normal kind of business. So these are the three conditions so far as these things startups are concerned. Now let's come to what are the benefits. I was listening to some of the interaction towards the end of the first session, and some participants, they wanted to know what exactly are the benefits of startup. So important benefits of startup, particularly from the viewpoint of the promoters, they are explained in this particular slide. First of all, eligibility for registration under Startup India. In fact, eligibility and registration that has been made very easy by the government of India, and nowadays mobile app has been introduced, and there's a dedicated website for the startup. So any potential entrepreneur can go visit the website or can make use of this mobile app, and they can get registered on the mobile app itself. So earlier, people used to talk about this thing. If you want to start your own enterprise, you got to keep on running from pillars to posts, and those gone are the days. And nowadays things have been much simplified, and you make use of this mobile application and website, and you can register on your own, sitting at your own place. Then number two, there are some this income tax benefit provided under the startup categories, and details one can have from Income Tax Act, or maybe one can discuss this thing with any tax consultant. So there are certain income tax benefit. Then see, processes have been simplified, and different type of forms which are required to build up by the potential entrepreneur, they have been simplified, and all these forms, they can be filled up online. So no need of going to different offices. Okay, so there are simple processes for starting the startups now. Then reduction in cost. So compare a startup with a typical non-startup business entity. So there are certain costs to be incurred on, patenting, trademark, etc. So trademark and patent, as you know, it's not only time consuming, but it requires a reasonably good amount of money as well. So far as startup business entities are concerned, as regards patenting and trademark, so to the extent of 80% of the expenses incurred on getting patent and trademark, so these expenses are borne by the government. In other words, you can say there's a subsidy of almost 80% available to startup unit. But if you are an entrepreneur who do not belong to the category of startup, then of course 100% this thing amount they have to pay from their own pocket. Then yet another advantage is you have easy access to funds. Now you see, gone are the days when people used to get stuck with ideas, and people used to feel unless you have huge amount of money, you just can't start your own enterprise. So Government of India is trying to facilitate establishment of startups, and a provision of 10,000 crore rupees of venture fund that has already been made by the government. And as per the eligibility criteria, one can apply for venture fund. And this venture fund is just like, initial seed money, which is given to the enterprises. So uh, uh, potential entrepreneurs thinking of having startup, getting into startup, they can have access to this thing and can avail of this easy finance. And even otherwise, nowadays you find there are, large number of venture capitalists even otherwise available, and there are people who have amassed a lot of wealth. They have enough of money and they want to invest. They want to put that money to some productive use, and they do tie up with good businesses. You must have all seen there was a popular serial called Shark Tank India, so which used to be aired a few months ago, and looking to the usefulness of inputs provided, assistance provided by Shark Tank India. Now, the second episode is going to be launched soon, second series of this thing, Shark Tank India, where, you know, entrepreneurs who have startup, who are in the process of struggling and finding it difficult to multiply their business, so they can approach sharks, and these sharks, they do provide professional assistance. They do get associated with new businesses, and they do provide equity assistance. They even provide loan. So terms and conditions can be negotiated. And the second, this thing series of the Shark Tank India program, very popular program, and I would strongly suggest to all potential entrepreneurs to see that program. There's a lot of learning which can really take place. Then all startups, they do get tax holidays for initial 3 years. That means even if you are making enough of profit, so initial 3 years of your business, you need not pay any income tax. So that's a huge relief. And naturally the amount which you have accumulated, that can probably be redeployed in the business, and entrepreneurs can definitely expand their business. So 3 years tax relief. Then apply for government tenders. As you would have seen, what happens is, as and when the Government of India issues tender, so there are so many ifs and buts, so many terms and conditions, and usually government agencies, they would prescribe some bare minimum years of experience, and a minimum threshold limit for this thing, annual sales or contracts which they have executed. So usually because of these conditions, many people, they are just not able to apply in response to those tenders. So startups, they have been exempted from this experience clause and also the turnover clause. That means a new startup which has just been established maybe a year ago, so they can easily and effectively participate in government tenders, and the clauses pertaining to experience and the this thing, turnover criteria, they are not going to be insisted upon. Then new startup would have easy access to research and development activities, and particularly with a view to facilitate startup, Government of India is coming up, with 7 research parks across the country. So startup entrepreneur, they will have easy access and they can avail of the facilities available over there, and there may be some nominal charges for that. Okay. Then no time consuming compliances. You know, when it comes to setting up an industry, so there are so many inspectors and so many returns to be filed, so many forms to be filled up. There are large number of labor laws, environmental laws, then different type of returns to be submitted. So Government of India has now started trusting more in new generation of entrepreneurs. And rather than these entrepreneurs going to consultants and going to advocates and all, so government has exempted them at least 6 of the labor laws and 3 environmental laws. So far as information with regard to these labor laws and environmental laws is concerned, so you can fill up these forms, these returns on your own, and you can self-certify them. You need not go to a consultant or an advocate for filling up these returns. So it's a huge relief, and that also reflects in this thing, whatever you say, whatever you self-disclose. So government says it's okay, but be careful. Any entrepreneur, if they tell lies or they submit wrong information, then serious action is definitely going to follow. And that may put the entrepreneur in serious problems. Then next is tax saving from investors' point of view. As you know, in new startup, there would be large number of investors, particularly, there may be some venture capitalists who may invest money. And venture capitalists basically work on the concept of this thing. They invest their money and maybe they won't directly participate in management of the unit. Okay. But when the unit starts making profit, so thereafter, usually the venture capitalists, they have tendency to selling off their holding and then getting a lot of money out of that. So there are certain, assumptions given to investors who invest in startup, and they are going to be exempted from capital gains tax. Otherwise, if you are getting into, somebody is earning long-term capital gain, then naturally 20% of the money that has to be paid as long-term capital gain. So investors in startup, they are exempted from capital gains. Then you can choose investors as per your own sweet will. You can go to government, you can go to state financial corporation, national level developmental bank like IFCI, IDBI, ICICI, etc. Or alternatively, you can go to commercial banks which exist in our country. And there are also private commercial banks. There are foreign banks also. Then there are venture capitalists. So one can take an appropriate decision and then raise funding accordingly. Then next is your easy exit. You see, till recently, people used to talk about this thing. It's easy to start a business in India, but then closing that business is not that easy. Getting out of that business is not that easy. But under Startup India program, government has made this scheme very simple, and government agrees. Like if we have to promote entrepreneurship and self-employment within the country, so certain amount of failures, they have to be necessarily tolerated. Okay, and if the business fails, so the entrepreneur made all possible effort to make so as to run that business, but because of the kind of risk involved, or maybe not all businesses are going to succeed, some businesses are definitely going to fail. So in case the business fails, so as per new bankruptcy code, okay, so one can file application for bankruptcy of that business, and from the date of filing bankruptcy, so your case is going to be settled within 90 days, and one can get out of that business within a period of 90 days. Earlier, it used to take years together, or because of so many restrictions, you are just not able to come out. So government, in a way, has made easy entry and easy exit, okay, which is a huge relief. Then the startup entrepreneur, they'll have a lot of opportunity to meet other entrepreneurs, and Government of India has been encouraging participation in variety of startup festivals organized within the country and outside the country. So startup festivals nationally and internationally. So new entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, they are encouraged to participate, and naturally when such interaction takes place, so a lot of business does get transacted. Okay. That was about the benefits of startup. Now we come to the importance of entrepreneurship, because this session is supposed to be on entrepreneurship, startup, and as to how they contribute making country Atma Nirbhar. So now I will switch over to importance of entrepreneurship, because as I referred to you earlier, there are 5 important pillars of this thing startup. Uh, uh, Atmanirbharta, and a variety of projects can come up in those this thing based on those 5 pillars or inputs required to strengthen those 5 pillars. So variety of enterprises would definitely come up. So let's now try to understand the importance of entrepreneurship in that context. So entrepreneurship education aids students from all socio-economic background to think outside the box, or what we call it as making creative application of ideas, and nurtures unconventional talents and skills. You know, you talk of any discipline, art, science, commerce, medicine, management, engineering, polytechnic, ITI, all those people who pass out from different institutions, they are definitely not going to go for jobs. Some of them maybe because of their family background, some because of their taste, some because of their habits or hobbies. So some of them would definitely not like to go for wage employment. They would definitely like to go for self-employment and entrepreneurial venture. There would always be some students who tend to think out of the box, and this out of box thinking is nothing but making creative application of idea and coming out with unique solutions of problems and designing, innovative products and services so as to meet the requirement of the society at large. So entrepreneurship opens up avenues for that. So it creates opportunity. Entrepreneurship, first of all, creates opportunity for our youth, ensures social justice. Social justice in the sense, entrepreneurship is something which can flourish in any social endeavor. No, entrepreneurship is not this thing prerogative of only Gujaratis or Marwaris or Punjabis, or maybe if you talk of caste, say Mahajans, Baniyas, or this thing. So entrepreneurship is something which can flourish in any social endeavor, and to that extent, so entrepreneurship definitely ensures social justice, and people from different walks of life, different cross sections of society, different religions, different caste system, they can get into entrepreneurship and start their own startups. And naturally, when you do something like when you have your own startup and it starts becoming, you start getting repeat orders, you start making profit. So it is something which is definitely going to instill a sense of confidence amongst you, and it would stimulate you as an entrepreneur, and ultimately your stimulation, your hard work is definitely going to stimulate the economy of the country. Okay, we have discussed importance of entrepreneurship in general, and now importance of entrepreneurship as such. Entrepreneurship accelerates the economic growth. So in any country, you would know, so more the number of enterprising people, higher would be the rate of gross domestic product. So enterprising population of any country can definitely accelerate the pace of economic growth in the country. And when we talk of entrepreneurship, it definitely helps in creation of new products and services. And naturally, when people get into producing new products and services, they are definitely going to provide, they are going to create a large number of job opportunities. So subsequent to setting up enterprises, there would be the outcome of this thing would be creation of new jobs, creation of new contract jobs, or casual jobs also, regular jobs, casual job, full-time job, part-time job. Then people nowadays talk about gig economy. Gig economy is basically going to be based on this thing, project-based job and project-based assignments. Okay, so entrepreneurship would give birth to creation of new jobs opportunities. Then entrepreneurship also helps in utilizing existing resources in the most effective manner, most effective way. There are some of the states, particularly like states like you talk of say northeastern states, you talk of Bihar or Orissa. these states, they are having a lot of resources, a lot of natural resources as such, but till recently, the local entrepreneurship was not that effective. And now, since the entrepreneurship promotion is being taken up in a big way, so these people would definitely, local entrepreneurs, they would definitely help the states in utilizing their existing resources, and they would ultimately, it would definitely result in a higher rate of economic growth in those states. Then large number of population in any given, in any state, any district, any place, it would definitely lead to increased this thing, innovations. So entrepreneurship promotes innovations. In fact, if you go to the literature available on entrepreneurship, there are some authors who say there can't be entrepreneurship without innovation and creativity. So a true entrepreneur would definitely create something out of nothing, and true entrepreneur would definitely innovate new products and services, introduce those new products and services into the economy. In fact, the moment you come across any new product or service in the marketplace, if you go in history of that, you would definitely find there is definitely some person sitting somewhere in the nook corner of the world who came out with an innovative idea, and then ultimately that innovation has resulted in giving birth to that new product or new service. And entrepreneurship can promote social change. So, so far as social changes are concerned, entrepreneurship has a very significant role to play. So, more the entrepreneur, better the socio-economic condition of that particular place. So, because entrepreneurship creates a lot of employment, a lot of it promotes a lot of economic activities, and socio-economic development would definitely pick up if entrepreneurship picks up in any particular place. And continuing with the importance of entrepreneurship, three more things which I want to discuss. They include entrepreneurship promotes research and development. I think we have talked a lot about this thing. So any new enterprise would definitely have research and development cell. Even smaller companies would have a research and development laboratory. So naturally, a new entrepreneur, they have to continuously keep on researching, continuously keep on introducing new products and services. So that's the importance of research and development in entrepreneurship. Then entrepreneurship develops and improves existing enterprises. You see, the moment you experience more entrepreneurship at any particular place, that would ultimately result in more competition, particularly a healthy kind of competition. And more efficient entrepreneurs would definitely eliminate the lesser efficient entrepreneurs. So, because in entrepreneurship, it's basically the survival of the fittest, and in entrepreneurship, individual initiative that gets rewarded immediately. As a result of that, so new enterprises will come, and existing enterprises would also be forced to improve. I think all of you remember, the moment India opened up its floodgate for foreign direct investment, and it was in 1991, India opted for this model of liberalization, privatization, and globalization, and the doors were thrown open to other companies. They started coming to India, they started establishing their own enterprises. As a result of that, some inefficient Indian organizations, they died, but those who had potential, they improved upon, and some of our Indian enterprises, Indian business entities also started becoming business entities of international standing, and they started becoming multinational corporations. So that's the benefit of healthy competition, and entrepreneurship encourages that healthy competition. Then entrepreneurship increases competition and boosts productivity. We have already discussed that. So this was about the importance of entrepreneurship. Now we have 5 institutions participating today: Saloni University, then Engineering College from Karnataka, 2 polytechnics at Ambala. Okay, so you might be wondering if you have to, promote entrepreneurship in your colleges, in your polytechnic, how do you go about it? So I have some suggestions to give to all of you. And if you can implement some of these suggestions, I am sure it would be far more easy for you to promote entrepreneurship in your institution. So my first suggestion to all of you is, first of all, mention entrepreneurship promotion amongst your students as one of the program specific outcome. Some of you even might be trying for getting NBA accreditation or NAC accreditation. Now, if you have to go for NBA accreditation, naturally you got to be very clear about your course objective, program specific objective, educational objectives. Okay. So I would suggest, if you want to promote entrepreneurship amongst your student, you must make a mention of it, and you must consider it as important program specific outcome. And these program specific outcomes are nothing but on completion of a particular program, what is it you expect from the student? So if we can mention some of our students, those who exhibit entrepreneurial potential, they are going to be identified, they are going to be nurtured, they are going to be guided, mentored, and they are going to be diverted toward entrepreneurship. So naturally, some of the enterprising students, they would start thinking in terms of setting up their own enterprises. My second suggestion is to establish entrepreneurship cell or technology business incubator. Government of India nowadays is providing a lot of funds. So under Atal Incubation Scheme, then Department of Science and Technology, Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India, and even many of the state governments, they are promoting technology business incubator. Also, far as establishing entrepreneurship cell is concerned, so government assistance or no government assistance, I would suggest you establish this cell. It doesn't require much of resources. Just you got to give identity to the cell, make one of the faculty as the coordinator for entrepreneurship cell, and this person should be willing to act as a friend, philosopher, and guide of potential entrepreneurs. And this person need to help those who exhibit some potential of entrepreneurship. Also remember, you see, entrepreneurship is not everybody's cup of tea. So everybody doesn't have the capability, doesn't have the kind of resources required for becoming, jumping into entrepreneurship journey. So there would only be a few selected one, and basically the wisdom lies in identification of those few selected ones. And having identified them, thereafter you start nurturing them, you start giving them reinforcement dose from time to time. And if you can do that, so some of them would definitely emerge as successful entrepreneurs. Then give identity to this facility by having a separate office. I have already mentioned. So have a entrepreneurship development cell in your college or in your university, okay, or in your polytechnic. Just little space is required, and a dedicated person can constitute his own team, mobilize help, not only from the faculty, he or she can mobilize help from the students as well, from nearby support system. So give identity to the cell. Let there be an appropriate board, put before one of the good room having some facility. This is our entrepreneurship development cell. Then appoint a coordinator to head the cell. And so far as appointing this coordinator is concerned, I would suggest this person need not be very senior people. He need to be a person who is seasoned enough, who is capable of providing the required services. But at the same time, this person should not be a fresher, because a very junior person or a fresher would not get much of the time from the chief executive or principal or director. So maybe reasonably a person identified from in between middle level of cadre, so is identified, who has little neck for working with entrepreneurs, extending his services. So that kind of person who can develop linkages with enterprise support system in the vicinity and with the industries around. So that kind of person need to be appointed as coordinator of this entrepreneurship cell. Then naturally nothing moves without money. So you got to have at least some budget sanction for it. And maybe you get going with a little bit of budget which your institution may provide. And thereafter, if you do something, you come out with some result, then you can even look for sponsors. Maybe some of the commercial banks or even CSR funding. If your entrepreneurship cell is going to undertake certain activity on ongoing basis, even nearby corporates, they can be requested to divert some of their CSR funding, and that can help you carrying out your entrepreneurship related activity. Then work on entrepreneur identification process. I would say the success of any entrepreneurship movement in any institution largely depends upon the right identification of potential entrepreneurs. Wrong identification of entrepreneurs may put you in trouble, and ultimately nothing is going to come out of it. There are tools and techniques of identification of entrepreneur, and a seasoned person who is trained in making application of those tools and techniques, so can make use of those tools and techniques and can identify potential entrepreneurs who really seems to be promising one and who seems to be forging ahead. Then create a pool of mentors and make them interact with the enterprising student. So in your vicinity, interact with industries around, identify some resource persons, identify people who can provide entrepreneurship related input. And when we talk of entrepreneurship, you see entrepreneurship being a multidisciplinary subject. So maybe you need experts who are very well versed with the legal provisions. Somebody is expert in GST, somebody expert in project formulation, somebody expert in marketing, labor laws, or somebody expert in giving project guidance, somebody expert in judging the viability of the project. So because entrepreneurship is a multidisciplinary task, so naturally potential entrepreneurs would be required to interact with variety of people, seasoned people. So maybe a pool of some 10 to 15 people who can devote little time and who can afford coming to your institution, interact with entrepreneurs from time to time. So you need to prepare that pool of experts and make them interact with potential entrepreneurs. These people would be giving them potential entrepreneurs reinforcement dose from time to time. Then have a selection jury if you have a technology business incubator. If you have established a technology business incubator, then naturally on an ongoing basis, you are going to identify, you are going to select some of your students as the beneficiaries of TBI. And for that matter, rather than you doing this thing, you must have a selection jury of maybe 3 to 4 persons, seasoned people who have expertise in understanding entrepreneurship, identification of entrepreneur, and selection of beneficiaries under technology business incubator. That should be left to the jury itself. Then prepare, if you are going to establish TBI, prepare its constitution or the way it's going to work, prepare calendar of activities, and the calendar of activity which you prepare, those activities need to be ultimately implemented, ultimately undertaken. So implementation of your plans that has to take place. And when you are undertaking activities, implementing those activities, then naturally you are going to require this thing review of these activities on an ongoing basis. So have regular review, monitoring, and reporting. So it's only through monitoring and reporting you report the result to the higher authorities, and if they are convinced, then naturally you will be sanctioned more fund, or you can even seek sponsored projects from variety of sponsors. Well, there's no time to discuss this thing, how to mobilize money and who could be the sponsors. That probably can be taken up in some other session. Now, we have talked about entrepreneurship education. We have talked about entrepreneurship education, but entrepreneurship without any concrete project in hand is meaningless. So ultimately, even if you motivate people and they are willing to get into some economic activity or some service project or maybe manufacturing product or servicing project, so naturally these people, they would come to you and they would ask you to provide some project ideas. Okay, so project, when it comes to project or product selection, this I would consider is the most crucial decision in the life of any potential entrepreneur. And there is no specific formula as such for suggesting entrepreneur. This is what you get started with. Okay, so there is no specific formula for selecting or advising a project to any potential entrepreneurs. However, this crucial decision, it need to be taken keeping in view or after fully understanding the market realities. Okay, so any potential entrepreneurs need to be advised and told, or need to be very thorough in understanding the peculiarities of the marketplace. And having understood the peculiarities of Indian marketplace, if we are talking of India as a country which is aiming at becoming self-reliant, so any potential entrepreneurs, when entrepreneurs try to take up any project pertaining to any sector of economy, so one must thoroughly examine the market and understand the market peculiarities and realities. So a few of the market peculiarities and realities I'm going to briefly discuss with you, and any potential entrepreneur has to necessarily keep these things in mind before starting any venture. What are these peculiarities of Indian marketplace? So I would suggest to all of you, remember, India is the largest market in the world, next only to China, and in this interesting market, both cheapest and the costliest things can be sold. I frequently cite example from nearby. I am in Chandigarh. So in Chandigarh, the sector NITER is located. So in this very sector, we have vegetable market. You visit this vegetable market, and when you go over there, so you'll find there are some people who are selling apple at 200 rupees a kg, very good shining sort of apple. And at the same time, you'll find another fellow, chabdi wala, what we call it as, okay, sitting on the roadside. And this fellow may not be selling that good quality apple, but then he's selling them at the rate of some 50-60 rupees, little rotten one. So the point which I want to bring home is India is a very peculiar market. There are some people who belong to high strata of society or high income group. There are good number of people who belong to middle income group, but there are sizable number of your population that belongs to poor state of economy, and they do not have much money to spend. And there are definitely 25 to 30% people who live below poverty line. Okay, so you got to really understand what is it you are going to manufacture, or what service are you going to provide, and to whom are you really aiming at, whom are you going to provide this product or service. So if you have identified that person, accordingly you should design your marketing strategy. So otherwise, as I have already told you, we, in terms of population, we are a country next only to China. China is 144 crore, we are 140.5 crore now. So it's only matter of maybe another 5 to 7 years, and we will soon be surpassing China as well. So we would, that way we would be the largest population in the individual country, and largest population means a lot of demand for goods and services. Second, the kind of throwaway culture which exists in many other developed countries, that kind of throwaway culture doesn't exist in India. Look to the, pay attention to this visual, the kind of products which are lying over here. You know, if you are in a developed country, so be they electronic goods, automobiles, or writing instruments, or household gadgets. So if things go out of order, so people tend to throw them away, people tend to replace them, right? So this is what is happening outside the world, but here in India, we want to get maximum out of whatever we spend. So we want to get maximum utility out of the money which we spend. And because of the kind of typical culture which we have in this country, so we keep on getting the same old things repaired time and again. So probably that's one of the reason you find Indian this thing service sector has progressed a lot. And if you talk of today's total GDP of the country, close to 60% of gross domestic product of this country comes only from the service sector. Hardly 13-14% from agriculture sector and remaining 25 to 26% from manufacturing sector. So you can well understand the importance of service sector. And so long as this throwaway culture is going to vanish, it doesn't exist in India, there would always be enough of scope for service sector in India. So from that point of view, I think we are in an advantageous situation. We still find old scooter, not so fuel efficient cars, old printing presses, etc. They are all working, and people just don't want to dispose them of. So that speaks volumes about the need for service sector in India. The best quality may not necessarily get sold in the marketplace. All potential entrepreneurs who want to practice entrepreneurship or who want to get into self-employment, they must internalize this important concept. Well, one may be in a position to manufacture the best quality, but best quality may not easily get sold in the marketplace. Okay, so one example could be all of us, we are fully aware of the kind of products which Godrej makes. Excellent wardrobe, excellent furniture items they make. But this evening, when you go back home, just try to find out how many Godrej products you have in your house. You see, at times it's question of affordability, at times it's question of so many other things. But the fact remains, we in India, we do not always want quality products. At times we need volume. At times you got to keep in mind the affordability, the size of the pocket of the client, and accordingly make the goods and services available in the marketplace. After all, you might be wondering, why is it we get duplicate chocolates in the market, duplicate so many other products? Okay, it's basically because of the kind of population which we have, the kind of market which we have for different type of products. So if you can internalize this important concept, the best quality may not necessarily get sold in the marketplace. You got to come up to the expectation of the consumer, and you got to accordingly make the products and services available. Okay. Next thing which you got to remember, don't simply get bogged down with innovative products and services. Many a time, people, potential entrepreneur, they would come to you and they would ask you, hey, please tell me a project which doesn't involve much of investment, which doesn't have much of competition, which doesn't involve too much of money, and the entire product get easily sold in the marketplace. ऐसा कुछ product हमें बता दीजिएगा. You see, you must tell these people, first of all, getting into totally innovative product, innovative project, it's going to require a lot of resources, okay, a lot of promotional effort, a lot of advertisement, and you as a first generation entrant to entrepreneurship, you may not be in a position to incur that kind of expenses. So I think so when it comes to starting an enterprise, you can just get going with any of the existing product or services. We in India, you see, we have not been in a position to manufacture a quality pencil sharpener so far. We have not been in a position to manufacture a quality, quality stapler so far, quality nail cutter, quality stapling pins, right? You try to make use of Indian stapler and Indian made stapling pins, you'll definitely have a horrible experience. So we still tend to import this thing from South Korea, Japan and all. So when it comes to starting a new enterprise, I personally feel success in business basically depends upon either making the existing quality of products available to the consumer at a lesser price, or alternatively you can bring little iota improvement in the quality of product and charge the same prevailing price. So in both the cases you are going to be in a good business. Either make existing quality available at lesser price, or better quality available at existing price. So this important concept need to be internalized. And we are a peculiar country, peculiar in the sense, in our country, latest technology and conventional technology, they go hand in hand. Bullock cart technology is not totally out of use in this country, but on the other hand, we do have, aeroplane like Dreamliners, Boeing 787. So we have access to latest technology. At the same time, the old, outdated, conventional technologies are still going. Bicycle still happens to be popular mode of transport for at least 50% of population of this country. But just try to look at this thing. Have we really ever tried to improve the load bearing capacity of the bicycle? Okay. So these are just a few things which as a mentor or as a guide to potential entrepreneurs, you got to keep in mind. And we have to help our student internalize. India is a vast market, and here conventional technology and latest technology, they are going to go hand in hand. So get into anything, but keep in mind your clients. Also, the vast Indian population, they tend to imitate. You must have seen this thing. If your neighbor buys a new car, you also buy a new car. Okay. If your neighbor buys a new, say, refrigerator, you also tend to replace your existing refrigerator. And also in offices, you will find if the boss is well dressed up, the director of the institute comes in, necktie, well suited, booted, and all. So peon working over there would also like to have a necktie, would also like to come in suit. And I have seen this thing, this tendency rising. Be they your maid servant, be they your subordinate or your category D staff. So they tend to compete with the people who can easily afford such like things. So when it comes to, a person who is paid maybe 5 to 10 times more than the lower paid staff, he or she can afford buying, Godrej, buying Raymond suit, buying Raymond necktie and all. But when it comes to, think of that consumer who belongs to category D staff. So this person would definitely compromise on quality. And because this person compromises on quality, or even many a time may even buy something second hand. So that is the reason, that is precisely the reason why is it the market for spurious products, poor quality product, duplicate product, why does that market exist and survive and thrives in India? It's basically because of this habit to imitate, habit to look like someone. Okay. So that's something which gives birth to this kind of mentality, and there would always be, enough market even for duplicates, spurious, or second-hand products. So my suggestion to all potential entrepreneurs would be, or people who are going to guide these entrepreneurs, so my suggestion to them would be to understand these market realities and later on help your potential entrepreneurs understand these things. So ladies and gentlemen, we have tried to discuss the concept of Atma Nirbhar Bharat, which is nothing but self-reliance. We have tried to discuss about the startup. We also discussed the benefits of getting into a startup. What are variety of benefits to the potential entrepreneurs, to the investors, and we have also tried to discuss a little bit about entrepreneurship. So what benefit entrepreneurship provides, and if you have to promote entrepreneurship in your college, in your polytechnic or university, how is it you should go about it? And finally, we concluded our discussion with this thing, a few tips or a few market realities which potential entrepreneurs must internalize, and before they take a final product or project decision. So these things need to be considered.